Very great honor to be here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and Joe and Jack. I can't thank you enough for establishing such a great battle rhythm between all the senior warrant officers of the Army. Teresa already ticked off all the names of some of the ones we talk with the most. We're sitting here at AUSA headquarters. Phenomenal team in partnership between our great association, our great Warrant Officer Association, and our superstars at the Association of the United States Army. We can't thank all you guys enough. I like to say about the Warrant Officer Association, if you think of E equals MC squared, right now it's more like expertise equals M squared C. M squared is Michael Dye, Michael Brent. They've been running around hooking us up, Joe Consiglio. But really, it's all of us working together throughout the year, talking to each other, making sure that we're in tune with the senior leadership and snapped in with each other so that we're going down the right path. Can't thank General Ham and General McQuistion and Stan Crow, who is always there for us enough, and all the rest of the great team. We saw Sergeant Major Daly last week, and we went to go record our video for AUSA. And, it is always a blessing to glean the guidance that we got from the Chief of Staff of the Army. And we are all grateful. And we take quotes from our senior leaders and we keep pounding. And so thank you all. And to everybody out there in outstations that are listening, very good on you to tune in. And I hope if you missed the AUSA Warrant Officer panel that we had last week, or that aired last week, we recorded it a couple weeks ago, please tune into that because it just gives you an idea that, as much as things change, what really drives change starts with great relationships. And so we talk to each other. We establish those relationships. We do like DC was saying yesterday, Chief Dixon Carter, time to talk to each other, time to show that we care about each other. And that's not something you do via email. I mean, that you got to commit the time, and it's got to be a conversation. And if you do it right and you do it on time, you might just find an opportunity to really grow into and shape future operations. So we talk, we inspire, we mentor, engage each other in our squad. And I hope everybody has a chance to do that down echelon. I want to see if I could just take a minute. We're at a tough time in the United States with people, dealing with the COVID crisis. And it's never an easy time as you come into the holiday season. And this past week, we just lost a couple of soldiers just within America's Army Reserve. And so I'd appreciate it if we'd all take just a minute, just a few seconds to observe a moment of silence for the approximately 1.2 million men and women that have paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy this conversation in freedom today. And thank you for that. And so how about on to some enlightening business here? A lot of people have heard me say, that get to know me, that I like to say as much as things change, some things stay the same. We're in a technological age. We're moving from an industrial force to an information age force. The enemies of freedom out there are not taking a pause or a knee as they go to set the conditions for their success, and we equally have to do the same. And so, so I've often said the very best professional development that any Army warrant officer, or really any soldier, can have throughout the world is to tune in to the senior leader discussions that are going on here every year at our annual meetings. So again, please hope you take the time to watch the videos. Hope you tune in this afternoon to a very kind of a critical discussion that's been going on for several months, really, leading up to some PME initiatives that are very forward-leaning and very forward-thinking. That's going to be a critical panel to tune into. You're going to hear from General Drew. General Drew is the new Talent Management Task Force Director, a former NCO and a former warrant officer. Pretty good guy to tune in and listen to. And Rick Knowlton, his CW5 advisor, and other great panelists. So again, hope you can tune into that. At our most senior level, as I said, we engage throughout the year, and sometimes our daily discussions turn into some very impactful initiatives, and sometimes that results in some really remarkable, permanent, lasting changes to our Army that help us shape the future. I want to spend a few minutes talking about some successful initiatives that I've been involved with over the past year. Since our last meeting a year ago, we had this privilege to conduct another talent management offsite with the senior leadership of the Army. This time it was headed up this January by General Funk and the Assistant Secretary Wardinsky and other senior leaders. And what we were doing there was trying to shape the strategic initiatives, part of which they're talking about at the panel this afternoon. So you'll hear about more of those directives, but I want to take a minute and highlight one of them. I had the privilege to work with Chief Kilgore and Chief Knowlton and others and help edit, working with the Administrative Assistant of the Army, Office of the Administrative Assistant. And our collective efforts helped to significantly shape and refine an Army directive that when it is issued, and it's in staffing now, it may come out over the next year, but it's an Army directive that's going to allow active component retired warrant officers to serve in the reserve components, meaning National Guard and Army Reserve, and without losing retired pay and actually allowing them to continue and receive drill pay. And this can do a lot to help us as an Army, so we're going to be looking forward to that directive. But just imagine what that would mean, particularly in context of things like blended retirement system. And how long do we think that somebody should serve before they should be allowed to retire if they want to retire at less than 20 years? We're, again, moving from an industrial age Army to an information age Army. So that's some things to think about. So another success I want to talk about, and my best great battle buddy Teresa already touched on, is the Accelerated WOCS course initiative. And if we advance the slide, I think you're going to see a nice picture there that I want to share with you. And what you're looking at are over 80 warrant officer candidates. They're masked up. You'll see some pictures along the top there as they masked up and they're going through the curriculum at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I just wanted everybody to appreciate that what it took to bring that to fruition are the bullets I put there at the bottom. The idea that we're one Army means we're one Army as long as we establish those relationships, as long as we establish those partnerships, as long as we talk to each other. You might be able to get an innovative solution to come all the way through. And it took 2 years to do it. Add a couple extra months there at the end because of COVID. But we often say in the DC area, the flash to bang time between having a smart idea and seeing it hit the street at the very minimum is about 1.5 years, if not much longer. And so you got some great partnership. And this had to be staffed first by asking permission from Colonel Nelson at the college and his predecessor, Colonel Hines, and making sure we had that buy-in. But then it took DAG 357 buy-in. Chief Davis up there was a key player in making sure that we could get the letter signed by his boss, General Costanza, the Demo TR. Retired CW5 Mike Adair in the DMPM, who manages the trap process for the entire Army in there. Had to have quite a few discussions with Mike, but he was willing to help us out. Jeff Jagars at TRADOC, Jennifer Wolf at TRADOC, the National Guard counterparts, Chief Bell at TRADOC headquarters, very important in helping us move documents and get things signed and approved. Just a lot of different moving parts there. And as we had IPRs, I had my skin removed multiple times. But where did this really begin? It began with a conversation after work, over a soda pop at National Guard Professional Education Center between me and the former Command Chief Warrant Officer of the Alabama Guard, Bill Allen. And then some of his SMEs that were standing around. And then they kind of piled on. And the next thing you knew, what we have now is this phenomenal achievement 31 July, we graduated 54 of those people in the green shirts there were Army Reserve warrant officers, the highest number ever graduated in Army Reserve history. And then take into account that, yes, during the COVID apocalypse, that was 74 human beings from Army Reserve, plus 20, 30 more from 29 different states traveled, many of them through international airports on crowded airplanes, all COVID free. And then they conducted the course, and Alabama Guard had called forward a company of chemical soldiers that were deconning 2-3 times a day in all the areas that the soldiers were, COVID free. And then we went home, traveling through international airports on crowded airplanes, COVID free. And so I want to use that as a moment here to segue to my boss's priorities for a second, because had a great office call yesterday, had to step out and talk to my boss for about a half hour. Lieutenant General Daniels, amazing soldier and leader, and her guidance to the Warrant Officer Corps, and I'll get her on video here at some point when she can take a breather and be able to do it 90 days on the job. And she's getting attacked from all sides, but that's good. And she's glad to do it. And her guidance to us is grow the Warrant Officer Corps, but do that by growing NCOs who can become future warrant officers. Pretty simple guidance. So what does that really mean? Are we focused on ourselves? Or are we really focusing where we really need to be focusing, at least in Compo 3, on sergeants, staff sergeants? And she said at our YTB last month at Fort Bragg, don't leave out the 10 levels, because you got to plant that seed and you want to talk to them when they're specialists. And so, but that's the part of the people, of course, priority. Readiness is always a priority. Modernization initiatives, a priority. Also partnerships and reform. Reform is about efficiencies. And I've been very blessed to be able to take part in some of those initiatives within Army Reserve, trying to tighten up our own policies. And talking with DC earlier, and not stealing her thunder, but when she says things like, you know, you got to manage talent, not comfort. And so maybe we got comfortable for a little bit too long, allowing some folks to stay, you know, on site way far longer than they should, allowing folks to stay in grade and in their MOS to the extent that it disenfranchises folks down echelon, and we don't get the talent refresh that we need to have. So we're working on policy related to this. So a lot of things kind of culminate and come together when you just start talking about something like the WOCS Accelerated Course. But back to that for a second. So what you got there now, the real result of this, the permanent and lasting change we had to have, a program of instruction for 7-day-a-week WOCS is back in the system. We used to have it as late as 2008. Think about if we have to ramp up to large-scale ground combat, what does that mean? We'll certainly be working 7 days a week, and we've already prepped that in the system. So it's just a remarkable application of leadership standards and discipline to execute that within a COVID environment, resulting in a historic event. And then, of course, you know, so, and I have to mention, that was 31 July when these guys graduated. The following month, Pennsylvania Guard decided to embrace that accelerated POI. They had been previously given permission, and many states were approved to try this. And only one stepped up and did it. It was Pennsylvania. And what they did is took their traditional first phase of WOCS, 5 battle weekends, 5 drill weekends, and they consolidated it into 13 training days or 11 training days, 13 days on orders. I instantly had 14 soldiers pounce on that opportunity. 10 of them graduated the course. And as a result, the following month at Camp Atterbury, that graduating class had 20 Army Reserve W1s. Again, the highest in Army Reserve history. 74 graduate new W1s out of the National Guard system. And so will we do this again? Begs the question. Well, the capability is there for us to use when senior leaders decide that we need to resource it and fund it and use it. And so it's a conversation that's not over. Talking with the boss yesterday, certainly we will start having those conversations again, understanding and accepting that this is a different environment this year. We've had quite a bit of budget discussions. What we can say open source is we got to get real creative about what we do with our training time and how much training dollars it takes going forward. So I'm very, very pleased, and everybody involved can be exceptionally proud of what we've done to make history. It's nice to be a part of history. I enjoy it, and I'm sure we all do. So that validated capability for accelerated WOCS is there. When we talk with each other across compos, we can find the opportunity to really grow the force the way that the senior leadership expect us to. This past year, we also focused considerable energy to refine a program to directly appoint AGR NCOs as AGR warrant officers. We call that AGR to AGR accessions, something we have done very little of in the past in very low numbers and in a very unplanned and unpredictable fashion. So what this initiative did began as an offline conversation. I go back to relationships again and the power of it. Conversations I had several years ago where the number one complaint from my peers and others down echelon is, why do my superstar AGR NCOs have to quit the AGR program after Active Guard Reserve just to become an AGR warrant? The reality was they never had to, but we never established a policy, and we were not being responsive to the needs of the force down echelon. And so that took quite a bit of work. W5s have to care enough to weigh in and fix these problems rather than just tune out those very uncomfortable questions and those very uncomfortable issues. And so starting about 2 years ago, I worked with our G1, our Human Resources Command, and our recruiting folks called Army Reserve Careers Group. And this year we graduated some of our first tranche of 30 W1s. Many of them were in that class that you see on the screen. And some of them will finish Warrant Officer Basic Course this year. So we're very, very proud of AGR to AGR accessions. Another successful effort we took within Warrant Officer Cohort Army Reserve this year was to put significant emphasis on duty MOS qualification, or what they call DMOSQ. And this kind of also nests under what Chief DC was talking about managing talent and not comfort. So we've had superstar people in the reserve component. We've got some amazing folks in Guard and Reserve that do incredible things out in industry. But they get comfortable in their assignments and stay there for years and years and years. And they do that because we're not doing the Chief Dixon Carter thing and spending the time to engage with them and inform them on what right should look like moving forward. So we've been doing that, just our command chief warrant officers at our 28 direct reporting commands, talking to their staffs down echelon. I had one command go from 22% non-DMOSQ earlier this year to 3% in under 3 months, just by informing people, hey, we appreciate you. We need you. Thank you for being an Army Reserve soldier. Can you please go over to this primary vacancy over here, MOS matching vacancy? And if you're worldwide deployable, the second you're on the books, you drive up the P level in the unit rating. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. I think when you listen to the chief yesterday talk about people strategy, okay, the right people being in the right place, I think that's what you got to get after. And we just need to do that more and more. So I'm happy to report that, and we're very proud of that, significant increases in DMOSQ. We had a historic year. We did our part to answer the COVID response. If you advance the slide. You know, there's something called, this is what we call the COVID placemat. There's legal authorities that allow reserve component soldiers to be activated, mobilized, deployed. And years ago, we discovered that the National Guard, due to illegality, is not allowed within CONUS, if it's not a full or total mobilization for war, they're not allowed to mobilize a Guard force to exercise mission command over other Guard forces within the continental United States or within U.S. territories. Again, if it's not a full or total mobilization for war. And I'm summarizing, I'm not a lawyer here. So I'm just hearing this. This is why the National Guard and the Army Reserve had to flip-flop assignments of our Theater Sustainment Command mission supporting NORTHCOM. And then when we did that, our Theater Sustainment Command down in New Orleans just went hog wild with engaging and they've been doing a phenomenal job. But based on that thought process, Army Reserve is a pure Title X force. There is no governor. There are no constraints with regard to where you send a pure Title X force. You can send them anywhere in the world or in CONUS to exercise mission command. So more and more Title X positions had to be positioned in the National Guard to help facilitate that. And I see Teresa back there nodding because of that, the criticality of that. So our COVID-19 response, of course, we did a phenomenal job. It only took about 3,000 of us. It was about 38,000 or more of the National Guard soldiers, but again, separated in every state, exercising their 502F legal authorities. But on our legal authorities, we sent them all over the country. 15 medical task forces deployed within 2 weeks. And actually, prior to that, our aircraft had already been utilized because they're pure Title X aircraft. So they were supporting well before our boots on ground folks were deployed. So that's just to give you kind of an indication of the capabilities we typically get asked for based on our structure, that engineer capability, that medical capability, lots of logistics. We've got 62% of the Army's logistics capability in Army Reserve. We're heavy on that. But to deploy it, what COVID did for us, and I think this is a takeaway. I earlier heard somebody ask about COVID and training in a COVID environment. Something that General Daniels is very keen on, to get back to collective training while exercising leadership standards and discipline. But we can do this. Look at the accelerated course. Look how well we did. All right. Expand that to a larger scale. Exercise discipline, get back to training in person. We know, you heard the question General Rainey was answering about what is the challenge with the virtual environment. Well, the challenge is very obvious. You do not build unit cohesion virtually. If you had a relationship prior to the virtual event, then you can kind of continue a dialogue that you already started. But soldiers, we are in the Army. We have to gear up. We have to get outside, and we have to get back to collective training. So we're going to continue to pressure that. We've had a couple of great exercises this past year where we were doing that. So more of that. Unfortunately, thanks in large part to COVID, we could not get all the warrant officer initiatives done before Lieutenant General Lucky departed. And, there was a crucible a couple of years ago, and at one point he was considering not having a command chief warrant officer. And he was going to do that because he just wasn't seeing necessarily what he needed to see to be convinced that there was a return on investment for that. But it worked out pretty darn good. And we made history. I just wish that had happened before he left, but that's okay. Tremendous soldier and leader. All the initiatives I talk about were started under his watch and with his blessing and with his top cover. And so I do believe we are a more capable, combat-ready, and lethal Army Reserve today because of him. Great soldier, great contributions to the nation. Our warrant officer cohort is certainly stronger and getting stronger. We're at over 80%, 81% strength, one of the highest in Army Reserve history, and we have several hundred candidates in W1s in the training pipeline who will be qualified within the next couple of years. So we're poised. If I had 2 more years, I'd be neck and neck with Teresa on trying to get that strength level up over 90%. But that's what we're after. We're always after that. It's an ongoing challenge. And so I want to point out a couple of things about the change in our NCO leadership. We have CSM Ted Copeland step away, and we welcome CSM Andrew Lombardo. Phenomenal energy and thought leaders, both of them. Partnership with Sergeant Major Copeland, and message strongly that what we're after is helping grow excellent E5s and E6s. He said, the thing I like the most about it is saying over and over, you got to give NCOs things to do and hold them accountable for it. Just because they're not there full time does not mean that they cannot engage. And we've gotten a lot better about that. So we've grown about 5,000 sergeants and staff sergeants over the past couple of years. Thank you to Sergeant Major Copeland. Sergeant Major Lombardo, same thing, partnership with the NCO Corps. It's huge to me, and I've messaged that strongly. CSM Lombardo has already been in 3 months on the job. He's already 4 months on the job. He's already been talking to my quarterly. We have a quarterly equivalent of the Senior Warrant Officer Council. He's already been to us and talked to our senior 4s and 5s and command chief warrant officers. He's already written a one-pager of guidance straight to us that we put in our warrant officer handbook and we educate new command chief warrant officers with. And so, you know, lots of things to be grateful for with his energy. I think you're going to see a real dynamic leadership, energy, and execution from the Army Reserve leadership team moving forward. On 28 July, when General Daniels took command, she was asked a question, "Ma'am, today, what is the one takeaway you want us to have?" And she said, "Create experiences that make soldiers want to be in the Army." You know, in the reserve environment, you know, the deal is we get to see soldiers maybe once a month on drill weekends when we're not in a COVID environment. And then we get to do a couple of weeks of training annually. So the challenge is, how do you treat that gathering? Do you treat it like actions on the objective, or do you treat it like something that's not very exciting? And mentally and emotionally, if the soldier knows they're going to come into a building and they're going to sit in a chair and listen to somebody speak from the front of the room, then you're already going to lose them mentally and emotionally. This is what the boss is after. This is about what being ready now is about. You can't shape the future if your soldiers are not there mentally and emotionally. Or like the chief says, we know we can accomplish any mission as long as units are very fit, very disciplined, and very well trained. And I'm paraphrasing. So great guidance. I've met her several times since then. And again, we'll get her on video and push out those and push out her talking points. But now let me see, move ahead here on my, another important thing to share. You know, she gave me an office call 2 months prior to taking command. Talk about the relevance and the importance that she sees of warrant officers in the formation to give me that kind of quality time before she started getting bombarded by everything else. Great thought leader, great soldier, General Daniels. Regret that I couldn't get her on video for this event, but it'll be coming shortly. But I go back to grow the Warrant Officer Corps and do that by growing NCOs who can become future warrant officers. So as we focus on filling our warrant officer ranks, first by focusing on squad leaders, it's the most blessed kind of guidance I could ever have, because that's what I've been talking about for several years, particularly while I've been in this job for the past 2.5 years. I talk about measures of effectiveness of an Army warrant officer, and I push that out within 1 month of taking this job. First and foremost, all warrant officers, you have to make your NCOs trained and ready on their systems, and that's a sacred responsibility. And once you've done that, you have to make sure you're mentoring somebody to become a future warrant. I've often said the past couple of years, if I had all 3,600 assigned warrant officers out there mentoring at least one NCO to become a future warrant, whether they drop the packet today or next year or the year after, we're doing the right thing. We're planting that seed and we're making sure we succeed. We'll never have a problem with warrant officer strength. Question is to get people to get after it and not just talk about it. It's kind of like Warrant Officer Association recruiting, isn't it? You know, we talk about it, but what do you got to do to inspire and motivate people to physically do it? But in the uniform environment, I think we're doing a pretty decent job of getting people to contribute in phenomenal ways. And so what I'm doing in the future is working on an information product. Let's advance the slide.
I'm Lieutenant General John Jensen, Director of the Army National Guard.
And we got General Jensen back. He is not my information product. But if we're smart warrant officers, we glean the useful stuff he just said about focusing on recruiting and education. That was good stuff. I got another slide in there that Yeah, Warrant Officer 101. And so here speaks to a lot of different things. Within our component, you end up finding out that there's different questions about why would a warrant officer want, or why should someone want a warrant officer career. We surveyed our NCOs 4 years ago. 800 of them responded and gave us some pretty interesting feedback. Nobody really telling them within the Army Reserve, where are the assignments at? Because most of them are not near any warrant officers. But we need to put an information product together. My G3057 challenged me to do this a few months ago, and I said, oh, I will commit to this. Because, when you're a senior, you want to help pass on the knowledge, right? So within Army Reserve, why would you want a warrant officer career? Here's what I intend to do, is take superstars like CW2 Kenya Rice. Yesterday, the chief, and tell me if I'm right about this, Chief Dixon Carter, but I think yesterday your boss went out and presented the MacArthur Leadership Awards. So this year's winner for Army Reserve is Kenya Rice. She wasn't there. She's a superstar 920 Alpha, a property book warrant deployed to CENTCOM. But I talked to her and I find out how she formed her team, how she engaged with people in between that once a month drill and formed her team well before they went on active duty orders and got them inspired and motivated. Talking to people like Dave Durbin, who is a CW2, lives up in Indiana. He runs the production line for the C-130J engine for the Air Force. Okay, pretty high speed guy, but we have him in the reserve components that do that kind of stuff. He's a CW2. So what did he do? He took his NCOs, about 36 of them, and he went out to the Indiana Guard and partnered with the warehouse manager for their SSA. And he got his NCOs trained up, just right seating, not getting in the way too much, probably, maybe a little, but got his NCOs up to speed on stuff that we don't get to do very much in Army Reserve. And then he went downrange with them and had a great tour. So get them to speak to NCOs about why they feel a great sense of integrity about being an Army warrant officer within the Army Reserve. Again, how do I qualify? So within Army Reserve, we have a different structure. So if you thought that you're going to be high speed in a BCT when you join the Army and get to go out there with some knife fighting infantrymen or get around tanks or artillery, we don't have that stuff in Army Reserve other than just a very little bit out in Indo-PACOM. What you do is everywhere we are, we're in somebody's state or territory. And almost every state in the National Guard has those opportunities to go do like Dave Durbin did and go out there and just be in the same training area. When troopers wake up radically when they see a tank going by, or even if it's just parked, but they see tank crew members sitting out there getting it ready, uploading a turret, or tubes firing, or helicopters flying overhead. That sort of thing is what soldiers join the Army for. Otherwise, they could have been sailors or airmen. That's what they joined the Army for. So back to what General Daniels said, creating experiences that make soldiers want to be in the Army. And we have that ongoing challenge. So within Army Reserve, we're going to show some examples of that. And then, of course, qualifying is about making sure you document it on your NCOERs, that you led soldiers. You have to plan those opportunities for our NCOs to lead and do an excellent job at it. And we find that that needs to be a conversation and a deliberate planning process, because we don't get enough touch time doing that within this component. And the final thing is about preparation. And so on the preparation piece, in the picture, you see a trooper sitting in the driver's seat of this, I don't know if that's a Stryker or Bradley. I think it's Fort Hood's probably Bradley. But the driver's seat, that's CW2 Johannes Paris. She's a 920 Alpha, property book warrant, was at Fort Hood. She was Sergeant First Class Paris in our formation 4 years ago. Getting ready to put in her packet, she decided to go to a National Guard Regional Training Institute pre-walk weekend. Got tuned up real well at that pre-walk weekend. Again, because of that limited touch time, it is very helpful for a soldier to go, and it's not just for warrants. NCOs show up at that thing, lower enlisted sometimes. She went to the Pennsylvania RTI, got tuned up, and then she did a phenomenal job, first time go at WOCS at Fort Rucker, and now she's in the regular Army. So you got an Army Reserve soldier, set the foundation, National Guard, tuned him up and trained him, and then the regular Army benefited. Well, we all benefit. So that's the kind of TTPs that we need to kind of explain to our NCOs because they're not hearing it enough. And that's why I have to put this product together. Advance the slide, if you would. And so, so again, it's getting folks, it's not just PowerPoint slides, it's going to be videos of superstars that are talking to people, and they need to be the younger warrants, not the old guys like me, talking to these guys. They heard from me enough. They need to start hearing from younger folks that get them to understand why now is a great time for them to take this leap in their career. And so, and finally, you know, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, so in preparation, one of the things we did for Fort McClellan is I personally sent a message out to all 75 of those candidates, subject line, trust, but verify. And y'all know what I mean by that. And it opens the door to get people to answer back using things like these apps that everybody has nowadays, or a lot of people have, to show you what your 2-mile run time is, or your ruck march time, like you're seeing here on the slide. I also got them to show me a little video of their push-ups and their sit-ups so I could critique them on it. And they didn't all respond, but about over 20 of them responded. And that wakes people up. If you want to, in a remote environment, a dispersed environment, like we're operating across 20 time zones, largest 3-star command in the Army for the command side of the Army Reserve. And how do you get people to engage? Well, part of it, you can use electronics, and we've got to be very creative about that in order to wake soldiers up and make sure that they know that you care about them. And that can open the door to having difficult conversations or conversations about difficult topics like race and equality. All of that can be done through the crucible of training. So those are some of my highlights over the past year. And, you know, meanwhile, we continue to support contingency operations. Several thousand soldiers are mobilized for Operations Oconus. We work towards collective training while protecting against COVID. As I mentioned earlier, we're engaged in every major exercise out there, NTC, CTC rotations, JRTC, but we also had a few thousand soldiers make it out to a large scale collective situational training. And so that's a good news story. And we're never going to stop doing that. And we're never going to stop being the superior Army. Clearly, we are more capable, combat ready, and lethal today than we ever were in the past. I'm working on a lot more initiatives, but I got to tell you, as much as things change, some things really do stay the same. 2.5 years on the job, my tenure is going to end in about 5 months. So, hey, it's been great. Been a lifelong honor. And I'm going to hit myself with this gavel if I get you. A little bit of getting, you know, the air in here is making my throat dry.
Good climb.
But I just want to tell you, I can't thank you enough. I for the leadership and the opportunity that General Lucky provided. And what General Daniels is going to do is allow me to have a great overlap. We're not going to have the situation like I had 2.5 years ago. Several months of no command chief. My XO was the acting command chief going out Oconus to briefings and things. I think we're going to have a really great transition. I only have a little over 100 W5s in America's Army Reserve. That's it. We're a smaller force. And I have been around to every one of them, encouraging them to apply, to engage, to remember that just because you arrive at this rank doesn't mean you've arrived really in terms of you still got to pass the ACFT. You still got to inspire and motivate. If needed, you have to break glass to be able to do what is needed to meet the senior leadership intent and make us more capable, make us more lethal, so that we can do as we're very good at doing. You know, COVID-19 didn't hurt us, really. It hurt us in some ways, obviously. But what it really did, and Teresa alluded to it, is it really tuned us up. It's tuning up our ability to generate mission assignments and mobilization orders. It's tuned up our techniques and thought process and strategy toward how we will aggregate forces and move them into the battle space. It's tuned up a bit more clear understanding of how we see ourselves and what we need to justify and defend in the budget moving forward. So any of those enemies of freedom out there that thought that we were hurt might want to think again, because we'll get called up. And when we're called up, we will fight and we will win. And I'm proud of that fact. I think we can all take great courage in knowing that we are blessed many times over to be soldiers, to be part of that 1% that guards our freedom and the American way of life. And through us and through our great nation, we help uphold basic human rights, freedom, and democracy for literally hundreds of millions of people around the world. So I find that very encouraging. And the challenge never ends. We have to be able to respond at the speed of heat when the nation calls. And I'm confident that we'll be able to do that more now than ever before. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I don't know if there's another slide there. I don't think there is. There it is. Who is that guy? So Hal Griffin. Yeah, I'm the only Griffin, Harold W. and the global address list. For those that have follow-on questions. Jack, do we have any that came in?
Yes, we've got time for one really solid question or a couple of small ones. I would like to roll a couple of questions up, and I hope I don't butch it up for those of you out there.
Okay.
But it's on the WOCS, on the WOCS program. First part of it is, are you going to take advantage of the WOCS RTI offered by, and this person's very knowledgeable, 27 different locations, 5 months, 1 drill a month, and 2 weeks at phase 2. So we're talking about the obviously the Army National Guard program. So that's part one of the question. And the second part is your accelerated program for WOCS open to Compo 1?
It could be.
Yeah, if you could take those. There you go.
Answer the second question first. It could be. The quotas that we trap for, again, Mike Adair, superstar, retired W5, who manages trap for the Army, I had to be very clear that the quotas that we did in this proof of principle, it was a proof of principle, so it's not a program. It's not a program of record. So it's a proof of principle, a one-off course. And by doing that, what that did was it validated a capability that may or may not be used as we need it. The people that have to make the decision the most, the ones who really had the hardest time with this, was the National Guard. They had to find National Guard pay money. We could not directly give, the Army Reserve could not directly give the Guard Title 32 National Guard pay account money. And they cannot give us Title 10 pay account money. It's fenced in the law. And so they found that money out of Hyde. Colonel Blanchard, amazing leader and soldier at NGB. And so I just offer to you that it is there. It can be utilized. And with the traditional 5 drills followed by a 2-week AT, we are every other month after a selection board, we have a new WOC telecon. And nearly all of those candidates show up on that call, and we'll do it through Teams while we can. And I have had Chief Domeyer come in and speak at a couple of them. We make sure we have a National Guard TAC officer explain that course to them. And so more and more, I think you're going to see more usage of it. But because we have some constraints with legal in terms of understanding application of the JTR within this component, we cannot order them to go spend their drill weekends going to that capability unless it's within 50 miles. That's the current interpretation. General Daniels has already started us on a review of the JTR on this. So I will also say, the second that any state, Teresa, everybody, any state pops up and says, we're going to do it, we're going to do an accelerated POI 7-day a week again, you will find, just like with Pennsylvania, a whole bunch of reserve folks will pounce on the opportunity because it's more convenient to them to do that. And then we can put them on active duty orders. and they get fully reimbursed for the travel and so forth. So, so it's there. It's a capability. Let's use it. Let's use it if we need it. Our problem with the backlog of training seats for WOCS is not fixed, but it certainly helped. Appreciate the question. That's awesome. Was that it?
Yeah, that's all I'm going to hit you with. We're coming down, but I would like to just kind of stress one, reiterate something that we've sort of been demonstrating during this entire meeting, and,
Yes, sir.
and going back to the warrant officer seminar we did beginning last week with AUSA.
Yep.
If anybody is looking at these briefings, yesterday the briefing from Chief Dixon Carter, and today the two briefings from Chief Delmeyer and USAR, I think that the message is real clear. We are one cohort.
Absolutely.
And boy, it's just, it's really awesome to hear about all the collaboration and how we're going to work together at getting at all those challenges. Sir, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
And folks, we are actually on time, which is amazing for a United States Army Warrant Officer Association meeting. I think we're getting ready to head into a 15-minute break. Mr. President, did you want to say a few words? Or okay.
Hey, before you go,
Uh-huh.
couple of fun asides that I want to share with you.
Okay.
We got to thank Anita for the glasses. My spouse, the artist who designed them. And don't forget, Griffin Harold W. I'm the only one on the global address list. Thanks for engaging.
Yeah, tell Anita that I may be contacting her for some of those glasses myself. But folks, take a little 15-minute break, grab something to eat. Next up, we're going to have a really awesome professional panel for you on Army talent management. You're not going to want to miss it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions for the panelists as well. Thank you.